What if Palpatine truly cared about Anakin and Padme? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Anakin sits quietly in the Opera House as Palpatine finishes his tale about Darth Plagueis the Wise. But he can tell there is more to this story than simply a fable. There is a warning there, and a promise of power. The power to stop someone from dying. Despite his best efforts, he cannot quite hide his interest. This is the type of thing he's been looking for. Something that can help him save Padme from harm.
I know you have been having visions of Padme, Anakin. They must truly be terrifying to experience.
How do you...
It shames me to admit it, my boy. But I was the one who sent you those visions.
What? How could you?
Please, my boy, you must understand my reasoning. I did this to show you what could happen. Though you are powerful in the Force, you do not know everything, and under the Jedi, you will never know much of what the Force can do.
So Padme, she is not...
I do not know for certain, and I doubt you may either. This is why it is important to learn these abilities, so you can be prepared for what happens. Believe me, my boy, I do not wish anything ill to fall upon you or Padme. But you, of all people, know how short-sighted the Jedi are. If some tragedy were to occur, whether to you or the galaxy, they will simply say that it was the will of the Force and turn their backs. I brought you here to talk on how to prevent that, to be proactive.
Anakin stops and stares at the Chancellor, trying to make sense of everything he's just said. He searches his voice, using the Force to look into him for any signs of deception, and yet he can find nothing. He speaks truly, right from the heart. Slowly, the young Jedi calms down and says he will think about it. But when the play is over, he leaves without another word. As Anakin returns to his quarters and sleeps, he finds no nightmares of Padme, perhaps as an act of truce from Palpatine. Instead, he finds himself thinking back to his experience in the Jedi Order. All the worst experiences. He recalls the first times they've abandoned people for the sake of serving the Republic, how they allowed the will of the Senate to dictate her policy, and all the times they've sacrificed compassion for the sake of their Jedi code. When Anakin wakes up, his first instinct is to assume that Palpatine sent more visions to him, but as he rises to his feet, he realizes that this is not the case. This was his own experience that the Force had brought up to remind him and guide him to make his decision. While he tries to brush it off at first, Anakin cannot fully dismiss what he saw and eventually decides to talk with Palpatine. This time, though, he demands they speak properly, without manipulations or visions, but simply to discuss the matters plainly. These are conditions Palpatine agrees to.
I am so glad you've decided to speak with me, Anakin. I understand you are still upset, so let me not waste your time. I think you, of all people, know the Jedi's inflexibility. They fear what they do not understand, even if it could save the Republic.
Perhaps, but some fear is well-founded, it seems, given what you've done.
I will not say that I am perfect, but I have tried. You must believe me. I orchestrated the Naboo crisis to show the galaxy how weak and ineffective the Republic was. But they did not listen, so I decided it must be bigger.
So you started a war, let countless suffer and many more die to prove your point.
I did. Then tell me, how did the Jedi respond during these two crises? How did they try to address the problems? Did they learn anything?
This time, it is Anakin's turn to go silent, as those old memories resurfaced. The same memories that came back to him now gave him all the answers he needed.
But that is what I want to change. It is only when there is a true threat to the Republic's existence, something they cannot possibly ignore, that change can be made. That is why I need your help, Anakin. You do not trust me, but surely you can see these changes are necessary. So why not help me? Why not join me and provide your insights? You and Senator Amidala would be welcome additions.
Anakin wants to protest and declines this offer. He doesn't want anything to do with this, but at the same time, he agrees that this idea has merit. Part of him has always wanted this, and the chance to make such a difference is intriguing. Instead, he promises to talk to Padme about it. Later that night, Anakin picks up Padme from the Senate and escorts her home. From there, the two of them talk about what Palpatine says. Anakin says that Palpatine has begun to question the effectiveness of the Jedi and Senate. He wants to take drastic action to reform it. As they talk, he lets slip that he agrees with some of these ideas. Padme is far less supportive of the idea. While she has appreciated his support in the past, a part of her is concerned about his growing influence in the Senate. She warns that this could just be a plot to gain more power, as Palpatine has already used multiple opportunities to take more control of the government. More importantly, she worries that removing the Jedi will also remove the only non-government organization that can challenge the Senate when they overstep. Rather than be won over by this idea, she becomes increasingly critical of Palpatine and begins organizing campaigns that aim to ensure a smooth transition of power. She calls for Palpatine to return some power to the Senate and provide answers to certain discrepancies in his campaigns. Anakin watches this with bated breath, fully expecting some sort of retaliation from Palpatine for turning against him. And yet, nothing happens. The Chancellor, though hurt by this betrayal, knows that he cannot force Padme to change her mind, and that attacking her will only embolden her. Instead, he focuses on trying to combat this criticism. He isn't the only one to take notice of these efforts, though. The Jedi also know how critical Padme is, and suspect there is more to it than they thought. Now more than ever, they are convinced that Palpatine may be hiding something, and urge Anakin to figure it out. And yet, the young Jedi avoids these answers. He never fully confirms whether Palpatine is a Sith Lord, and all the information he provides is vague, and doesn't truly point to anything. While he does say Palpatine is a radical and a reformer, none of this gives them any ironclad information. Unfortunately, this doesn't satisfy the Council, who call Anakin forward.
We're just concerned, Anakin. The Chancellor has taken an unusual interest in you. He is not a Jedi. His influence is unprecedented. He's been nothing but helpful, and he trusts me, unlike others I could name.
Anakin, we're not saying he means to harm you, but you've been spending more time with him than you have with your brothers in the Order. We worry that you are perhaps forgetting your task.
I'm spending time with him because I was assigned to do it. I'm not a spy. We need to know where his true loyalties lie. The Sith have remained hidden for years. We cannot ignore the possibility that he may be compromised. And if he is, this is a threat to the very heart of the Republic. And if he were, what would we do? Overthrow him? If it comes to that, then yes, we will restore the Republic to how it was supposed to be.
Anakin's fist clenches as he hears that. How things were supposed to be. When the Jedi were serving the whims of the Senate, they covered their ears to every injustice they encountered. He curtly promises to keep his eyes out before leaving the chambers. He has more pressing matters to attend to, as later that night, Padme organizes a rally in the Senate Plaza to gather support for increased accountability from the Chancellor. Anakin watches from the sidelines as Padme speaks. Despite their conflicting ideas, he can't help but feel proud at watching her speak, so full of fire and rallying the people to her side.
We must demand accountability. We must ensure that power remains in the hands of the people, not just the few who sit in high towers.
Her speech is cut off as she's suddenly lifted off the ground. Anakin's eyes widen as she's slammed against the ground, near the back of the stage. The crowd gasps as a crimson blade ignites, cutting through the darkness. In seconds, they are scattering, hurrying to get away as Anakin tries to march forward to confront this threat. A figure in black advances, launching himself from the crowd right onto the stage. Anakin ignites his lightsaber and hurries after him as he approaches the fallen senator. Padme barely had time to react before the Sith assassin lunges. She stumbles to the ground and tries to crawl away as her security team advances in front of her and fires her blasters to try and buy her time. However, these guards are all tossed aside or cut down by the assassin, who swings his lightsaber in an almost lazy arc. He is about to drive his lightsaber down when Anakin stumbles between them and catches his lightsaber with his own, directing it towards the ground. He follows with a vicious punch that sends the figure flying.
I know it is you, Palpatine. I never should have trusted you.
He springs forward and slashes his lightsaber down in a wicked slash. The assassin says nothing and catches the lightsaber and knees Anakin with enough force to knock the wind out of him. Cursing, Anakin tries to stab at him, but he sidesteps the attack. and then the assassin swings. His movements are fast as he rains down attacks on him, but he doesn't just attack directly, he lunges and sidesteps, bouncing off walls to strike at different angles. Anakin, whose mind is still racing and whose anger is close to bubbling over, fully commits to meeting these attacks. He strikes and strikes, back hard, trying to knock the assassin over and cut him down. But his lightsaber only meets the air as all techniques and strategy are tossed out the window. As he jabs his lightsaber forward, the assassin shifts his stance and takes advantage of Anakin's overextending himself. He then throws a powerful force push that throws Anakin against the wall. The assassin raises their saber for the killing blow. A crackle splits the air. Purple lightning screams through the darkness, striking the assassin in full force. The figure convulses, their body twisting as arcs of energy send them flying. When he hits the ground, his hood falls over, revealing Darth Maul. Anakin barely has time to process what's happened before a deep, familiar voice rings out.
I believe that is enough.
Chancellor?
Maul snarls, crimson blade still ready as his eyes flicker between the pair, and then he starts to stand up. Lightning crackles from Palpatine's fingertips again, but Maul leaps into the shadows, disappearing into the cityscape. Anakin rushes to Padme's side, checking her pulse. Relief washes over him. She is alive, but needs immediate medical attention. Palpatine calls for his transport to get them to safety, promising to talk once they are in private. Anakin nods, picks Padme up and loads her inside. But as they drive off, unbeknownst to either of them, a small probe droid hovers in the distance, its red sensor blinking as it captures everything. It was meant to be there to record the events of the speech, but discovers something far more important. Padme lays in the hospital bed, still unconscious, but stable. Beside her, Anakin squeezes her hand as Palpatine approaches him, and then bows his head.
Maul was my former apprentice. I believed him to be dead. Clearly I was mistaken. He now has returned to come after you, my boy.
He went after her because of me?
To get to me. There are only two, a master and an apprentice. If you had fallen to my teachings, Maul would be replaced and my rule secure. By going after you, he prevents me from getting a new apprentice.
In this event, it was perfect because he could make it seem like you were trying to silence Padme.
Anakin's breath catches in his throat. The pieces begin to fall into place. All this time he was certain Palpatine was manipulating him. So sure the Chancellor has hidden agendas, but now, after everything...
I am sorry, Anakin. I did not want this. Any of this.
For the first time since meeting the Chancellor, Anakin Skywalker has no idea what to say.
What do we do now?
Isn't it obvious? You must go after Maul. If he struck here, there is no doubt he will strike again. With Padme so vulnerable, it is a risk waiting. You must nip this problem in the bud.
And what about you?
It is not my first time dealing with the Senate and Jedi. I can keep them at bay for a few days more.
The dull hum of medical monitors fills the air as Padme slowly stirs. Her eyes flutter open to the sight of several figures standing around her bed. Jedi, Mace Windu, Kellen Ogar, and Cece Teen watch her closely, their faces unreadable. Blinking groggily, she pushes herself up.
Senator, I'm relieved to see you awake, but we need answers.
A holoprojector ignites. The grainy footage flickers to life, showing the chaos from last night. Anakin fighting desperately, a hooded assassin overpowering him. Then, Palpatine, his hand outstretched, lightning pouring from his fingertips as he strikes down the attacker. The hood falls back. Maul's face is unmistakable. Padme's breath catches. She looks at the Jedi, their expression hard and expectant.
We know you are close with Skywalker. He has proven evasive in his answers. We had hoped you could give us a straightforward answer. What do you know of Palpatine?
Her heart pounds. She thinks of Anakin, of his loyalty to the Jedi, of his trust in them. Then she thinks of Palpatine, the man who has spent years working alongside her, the man who saved her life. She hesitates, but then the truth comes pouring out. She tells them everything that Anakin told her, about Palpatine's policies and how he wishes to become Emperor and do away with the Jedi in the Senate. As the last of her words spill from her lips, no one speaks.
Palpatine saved me. I understand what this looks like, but we must proceed carefully. He is still the Chancellor of the Republic. He must be arrested and given a fair trial.
Senator, he is a Sith Lord. There will be no trial.
No trial? But he saved my life.
But he also tried to recruit you to their cause. We cannot dismiss the possibility that this is to use you as a pawn in his game. Do not mistake an act of convenience for an act of mercy.
I am no one's pawn.
Do not take it personally, but the Sith are a threat to the Republic. We do not negotiate with their kind.
He is still the Supreme Chancellor.
And we are the Jedi. When it comes to Sith, we decide on how to handle them. We thank you for your cooperation.
With that, the Jedi depart, leaving Senator Amidala alone. The words send a chill through her. The Jedi have always positioned themselves as peacekeepers, as guardians of justice. But at this moment, they are assuming authority beyond the Senate, beyond the Republic itself. They are judge, jury, and executioner. Anakin sprints through the undercity of Coruscant, his eyes fixed on the figure in front of him who hurriedly makes his way through these underground docks, meant for smuggling people in and out of the planet. He does not dare to take his eyes off him, knowing that if he loses the sight of Maul, it will all be over. Anakin finds one ship dock nearby, bearing the markings of the Black Sun, and knows that that is where Maul is headed. The Sith warrior is about to board when the door suddenly slams shut in front of him. A Black Sun warrior raises his blaster, but Anakin hurls his lightsaber and runs him through the chest, pinning him against the hull.
You're not leaving.
Skywalker, I've been hoping to meet you for some time now.
Then it's a good thing you won't live to regret it.
Anakin charges and blocks Maul's savage overhead strike, but then twists aside as Maul brings up his second blade and tries to slash him. Anakin darts back and takes a deep breath. The Night Brother smiles as he charges, unleashing a series of sweeping attacks. They grow faster and more aggressive with each one and force Anakin back. Cursing, the Jedi meets the next strike and holds his ground before pushing forward and letting the Force rush through him, sending Maul skidding. Anakin doesn't let him recover and brings his lightsaber down, though Maul avoids this strike and kicks him back. This knocks the air out of Anakin, but he manages to redirect Maul's follow-up attack and elbows him across the face. As his opponent reels, Anakin slams one foot against Maul's knee. He uses the Force to give him strength, letting him twist the metal. The Sith warrior drops to one knee, but catches Anakin's next attack. He desperately shoves the young Jedi back before coming at him again. Though quick, his wound slows him, and his attacks are not as precise as before. Anakin takes a deep breath and anticipates them all, ducking and sliding against each one, waiting for the chance to strike.
Allying with Palpatine will be the death of you, and everyone you love.
Maybe, but you will die here.
Now it's Maul's turn to let his anger get the better of him. He curses and continues to press forward, pushing himself despite his injuries. That is until at last he tries to lunge at Anakin, but the shattered leg gives way and Anakin takes the opportunity to strike. His lightsaber flashes and cuts Maul across the neck, his head rolling across the floor. Anakin deactivates his saber, turning away as his comlink beeps.
Anakin, I was wrong. The Jedi, they won't arrest him. They're going to kill him.
His blood runs cold.
Get back to the Senate now.
Anakin clenches his jaw, heart hammering. He reopens the Black Sun ship's doors and hops onto the controls. Anakin sprints through the corridors of the Senate building. The doors to the Chancellor's office are already shattered, letting the scent of scorched flesh and ozone linger in the air. Bodies litter the chamber. Jedi, their robes smoldering, their faces frozen in pained expressions. CC-Teen, Ajen Kalar, Kit Fisto, all dead. The only ones left standing are Mace Windu and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and between them, Palpatine. The Chancellor is wounded, his breath uneven, but he keeps the fight going, leaping up to avoid Obi-Wan's attack and then slashing at him. The Jedi twists back to avoid the strike as Mace rushes forward. Palpatine tries to strike him with lightning, but he catches it and then turns it aside. Mace strikes again, his violet blade carving through the space between them. Palpatine barely dodges, his face twisting in exertion as he tries to stab at Obi-Wan.
Stop this madness!
The fight halts for only a second. Mace turns his head slightly, his expression hard and unyielding.
Stay out of this, Skywalker. This doesn't concern you. He saved Padme. He's still the Chancellor. This isn't justice.
Anakin, we cannot let him remain in power. You know what he is.
I know what he isn't. He isn't the one who stormed into the Chancellor's office and tried to assassinate Padme. He's the one who orchestrated this war. Do you think he would truly go quietly? This is the only way.
You see, the Jedi have betrayed the Republic. If they kill me, nothing stops them from taking control. They speak of their precious Jedi code until it becomes a hindrance to them.
You think this is about power? This is about stopping a Sith Lord before he enslaves the entire galaxy.
And yet enslavement has happened in other forms under your watch.
Those words strike a chord with Anakin. He recalls his time on the Outer Rim, back as a slave and during the Clone Wars. And then he makes his decision. Igniting his lightsaber, he rushes forward, aiming a stab at Mace. But the older Jedi turns and parries his attack, giving him a hard look.
You disappoint me, Skywalker.
He suddenly pushes Anakin back and unleashes another burst of attacks, the slashes raining down on the young Jedi, who is placed on the defensive. Anakin feels the power in each attack, the blows threatening to overpower and send him sprawling, but somehow he manages to retain his footing, just as the last blow comes. Their lightsabers lock and Anakin feels his back arcing as he begins to falter, but then Anakin twists aside and knees Mace in his midsection. This momentary relief is all he needs. The Jedi rushes the Master and aims a downward cut at him. Though Mace catches the strike, Anakin kicks him again and sends him sprawling. Mace tries to cover himself with a wide slash, but this doesn't stop the young Jedi from leaping over it. He then slashes across Mace's side. The Jedi Master throws his head and screams, but then he reaches out with his offhand and grabs Anakin by the face. He then slams him against Palpatine's desk. Mace raises his lightsaber and prepares to decapitate him. At the last second, Anakin rolls aside and then plunges his lightsaber into Mace's heart. In the meantime, Mace's attack has freed Palpatine to deal with Obi-Wan. The two clash across the room. Now, fighting alone, the Jedi redoubles his efforts to try and push Palpatine back. But the Chancellor moves with surprising grace and avoids these attacks. And then he unleashes a burst of lightning. The Jedi Master screams. His body convulses as he's hurled backward. After a moment, Palpatine stops and prepares to finish him off.
Wait!
Palpatine hesitates, his expression unreadable.
Chancellor, don't kill him. I know you despise the Jedi, but if we are to build a new future, then we need men like Obi-Wan. I will help you, but if you try to fight him, I will stop you.
Obi-Wan doesn't lower his saber. His eyes search Anakin's, looking for any sign of deception. Palpatine watches the exchange, then lowers his hands and deactivates his saber.
Very well. If my apprentice wishes for mercy, then I shall grant it.
And yet there is a glimmer of respect in Palpatine's eyes. Anakin exhales, his shoulders relaxing slightly. Obi-Wan, seeing this battle turn against him, lowers his weapon to the ground. Before Anakin can respond, the chamber doors burst open. Below, Padme stands before the Senate and gives her speech.
All of you are aware of my criticism of the Chancellor. I have long been a proponent of accountability and transparency. But despite my misgivings, I have never once called for vigilantism or political murder. However, some individuals have decided to take matters into their own hands. The Jedi stormed the Chancellor's office and attempted to assassinate him.
Gasps ripple through the room. Murmurs rise among the politicians, their eyes darting between each other.
Is this true?
Suddenly, Palpatine appears in the doorway, accompanied by Anakin and two Coruscant guards who escort Obi-Wan.
I fear it is. Had it not been for General Skywalker's intervention, I would not be standing before you now.
A stunned silence follows.
This was not justice. The Jedi acted outside the law. They did not seek to arrest him. They sought to execute him. Without consulting the Senate, and without following the rule of law. I cannot abide by this.
The senators exchange uneasy glances. The idea of the Jedi attempting a coup is unthinkable.
The Jedi have shown their true colors, but fear not. I will ensure stability is maintained. Thankfully, General Skywalker has come up with a solution.
Anakin proposes his plan. He calls for the Senate to order the clones to oversee the Jedi so they can investigate who is responsible. Those guilty of taking part in the coup will be executed, but those who have no part will be allowed to return. The Senate responds approvingly to this, and the orders are carried out. Soon enough, the clone forces are mobilized and surround the temple. Anakin provides these terms to the Jedi, and with video footage, there is no denying the Jedi are guilty. Seeing this, Yoda has no choice but to surrender. The younglings and instructors are allowed to leave in exile as a gesture of goodwill, while the rest are imprisoned. True to his word, Anakin ensures they are all treated fairly. With that done, they move on to other reforms in the galaxy. Palpatine proves sincere in his promises to reform the Republic. He begins cracking down on corruption, better enforcing the laws and reforming the justice system. But all of this only paves the way for the rise of the Empire. As the process continues, even his harshest critics cannot help but acknowledge his actions, including a few Jedi who eventually offer their services. Palpatine observes Anakin, noticing his growing leadership ability, and makes a dramatic move once the Empire is established. Anakin shall be named his heir, allowing his family to decide the galaxy's fate. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.